So the first one on lateness. So let's look at this issue of lateness. So why might something be late? From a conversation standpoint, why might something be late? They didn't know when it was due, right? That would be one. So one reason something is late is because there was never an agreement for by when it should be done. So one of the things, if you're consistently getting stuff late, then one of the things you could begin to look at is to see whether or not your requests contain by whens, right? And if you look and you notice, so that's one option, is that there's no by whens. Why else might something be late? Okay, so one would be that, yes, the by when was there, but somewhere along the line they made a choice to do something else, which now means they're not honoring your agreement, right? So now why might that happen over time? Pardon me? Well, in the request, they may not understand the why. So that would be one, right? You could look at, oh, why is it late? You know, I got a by when, but I didn't see it, and I had another by when at the same time, and I didn't know why you wanted yours, and I knew why they wanted theirs, so I chose theirs over yours. It's in their world, that's a valid thing to do, right? So that the why was not clear. Okay, so now everything's there. And this person, you notice that the lateness seems to be recurring with somebody. And I wonder why that would be. So your requests are good. That is, they're complete. Why might something be late?
It doesn't matter to them.
Why would it not matter? From a conversation, where would be the place that mattering would be evident? How would you be able to demonstrate to someone that what you asked for actually mattered?
Closure.
You'd have a closure conversation. And you'd have a closure conversation in which you acknowledged, in this case because it's something late, and it's late because it was agreed to that it would be on time. So it's late, and the closure conversation is around time, so you can actually now acknowledge the facts. You said we agreed it would be at this time. You know, I appreciate you have a lot to do or whatever it is, and not being flippant, but you'd actually be aware of their world. And then you could actually, if you were to do all the components, say, I apologize if I didn't provide something that made it clear that this was really important. Was there something that I missed? Is there something I included, left out? You'd have a closure conversation in which you actually found out from them what happened that you didn't get this. So if you make good requests and people aren't delivering, and there's lateness occurring with one person or some people over time, then it's likely that there's no closure that's happened, so accountability hasn't been built. They don't get that it's really important. How do I know it's not important? Like Scott, I was 2 minutes late. You didn't turn in a request, I didn't say anything. So the next time I make a clean request and you don't turn it in, I didn't say anything then either. No closure. I've learned, hey, look, you make good requests, I just don't have to honor them. So it becomes late. Now, why else might it be late?
Maybe they don't have the resources.
Yeah, they don't have the resources, they don't have the stuff that's necessary. Now, we didn't talk about that as part of a performance conversation today, but in the book we do talk about good promises. You could find out, are people actually available for accepting your request? You know, you had talked about deadlines and all that stuff. Are they actually available? Do they have the resources? If not, then you can have a conversation for what do you need, what needs to be provided. So now you're into an understanding conversation about, well, let me understand, okay, so you need these resources, and you would need this, and you need, okay. And then you might look at all those resources and decide, look, I can get those for you, or I'll do this for you, and we've now got a new set of agreements. The whole idea behind the performance conversations is there's something that you want. And it's a relationship that's required to make it happen. And it's a relationship that's based primarily, what you're interested in are results, primarily on the keeping of agreements. If you also want the affinity part of it in there, then you're going to want to be sure that you do that in a way that's respectful and appreciative of people. And you can do that in a closure conversation. Look, did I mess up? Did I make a mistake here? So lateness is resolved primarily, the first place to look is in a performance conversation, the second place to look is into a closure conversation. And those are conversations that you can have. Anything about that with regard to lateness? Now notice that doesn't say anything about them. They're going to be the same person they were before as after. I'm sorry, Kristen.
That's right. Just one question going back on the closure. You talk in the book about then following up. Is that once you've had the closure question,
Closure.
Conversation, then as a supervisor you can take it on yourself to follow up?
The follow-up is really closure on the performance agreements. The follow-up really does occur. So there's multiple ways to follow up. We can have a long-term, many-week kind of thing, and I'm going to check with you periodically to see how it's going, not to micromanage you, but quite literally to support you in success. So that's a form of follow-up. The follow-up in terms of completion of it is in a closure conversation. Other questions with regard to lateness? Yes?
Looking back at the notes I took, from our conversation, I guess I wonder during the understanding part of the conversation, why did we make the assumption that you asked how long does it take? So there's a complete understanding then. I think about lateness, I think maybe somebody miscalculated underestimated how long it would take.
Yes, that could be true.
So I guess I feel like that's the part of the conversation I would be going back to.
That'd be fine. Absolutely, you could do that. It is true we could have misestimated the time, but we'll find that out in a closure conversation too. Because the thing you're looking at is lateness. So an event has occurred. So closure is designed to complete the past, which means something has occurred that I now want to deal with. So lateness has occurred. I now want to deal with that. So the closure conversation gives me access to completing that. And in it, when you apologize, is there something I left out? No, man, we just completely misestimated the time. Oh. So now we can have a conversation that reorients to that. That could also be I could have handled part of that when I was making the request, right? To find out, I think it's going to take you a couple hours. Do you see any problem with it? Well, no, but people do misestimate. You're right. But you should discover that in a closure conversation. And then make whatever modification that you would want. Yeah. Here's the thing about understanding conversations. They're not required for a performance conversation. I can go directly to a performance conversation. And if there's something that you need to know or want to know that requires understanding, we may have that. But it's not a prerequisite. I was talking to Brian earlier in the stuff that he's dealing with mergers. I can start with closure. My wife does a lot of management consulting in organization change. She always starts with closure conversations. Why? Because people in organizations have gone through lots of changes and they're always still dealing with the last change that wasn't completed. So you start with a closure conversation and acknowledge what changes have been going on and where they are and apologize for anything that's happened or find out that kind of stuff. And then let people say what they need to say. Okay, now, here's what I want to here's what I want to get to. But it's a legitimate closure conversation. So you don't have to, that's why I asked you earlier with understanding conversations. They have to understand before they can do. No, they don't. They only need to understand what they need to understand in order to do what they want to do. Does that make sense? If I give you an engineering problem and you need calculus, then you need to understand calculus. You do not need to understand the history of calculus in order to do the engineering problem. You don't understand a whole bunch of stuff in order to do the engineering problem. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we give people as understanding as if it's required. It's not required. It's not necessarily required. That's the thing you have to learn. So anything else about lateness?